Hello and welcome to this episode of Self-Made. I'm your host, Dee Brown Ceo. Joining me on the show today is Elizabeth El-Nattar. Elizabeth is the CEO of Harmonic Solutions. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So, Elizabeth, I want to jump right in, and I want to learn about your childhood. Where did you grow up? And tell me a little bit about your childhood, the early years.
Actually, I grew up in Shanghai, China until I was 14 years old. My family was capitalist. I think I was the only one left. So I was kind of sheltered. I wasn't allowed to go out because they were always afraid the government was going to kidnap me or something like that. So I didn't have a social life. So when I came here to McLean, Virginia at age of 14, I had a blast. I had to take showers for myself for the first time. I made a mess in the bathroom. And then I learned to do everything by myself. Nobody was telling me what to do. It was great. And this is really the only social life. This is the only country where I had a social life and I had friends, and I just love it.
Really? So tell me a little bit more about that first 14 years in China. Give me a little bit about what that was like.
Well, honestly, I don't remember a lot of it because I was always inside the house. When I had to go somewhere, I was escorted in a car. So I was not really able to mingle with the general population. So I didn't have any friends. So I always joke. And it's actually not really a joke. It's kind of true. My social age is 14 years younger than my actual age because I didn't get to any human beings, outside of, my nannies, the cooks, the tutors that taught me. So, and I lived a very sheltered life. It was very nice, but I prefer freedom and democracy over, luxury and being kept like a bird in a cage.
Right. So what was the transition like, leaving China, coming to the United States? Obviously there's some significant cultural differences. So what was that transition like for you at the age of 14?
Well, when I first got here, it was like watching TV with the mute button on because I didn't really know English, Back in the days, I think they had a second language in China, which is Russian, but I didn't really get to learn a lot of it at all. I knew very little English. So, I had to adjust and everywhere I went, I just smiled. I had no idea what people were saying, and it was kind of confusing. However, it took me 3 months to learn English. And then, I moved forward from there.
So what was your biggest challenge during that transition that you can recall?
Honestly, the transition wasn't really cultural because my family was always more, westernized than others. The transition was more about the social skill that I told you about. Suddenly I get communicate and hang out with my peers, kids of the same age, which I had never done before. That was great. Even though there was a language barrier, I went to Longfellow Middle School and then I went to McLean High School and then transferred to Langley High School. Same as my kids who went to, Longfellow and McLean High School. So that was really fun for me. And then I went to college. I had some issues, with studying and all that because my reading comprehension wasn't very good. It wasn't until I got to my MBA studies that I kind of got used to, everything and things became smoother.
So let's just take a couple steps back and go back to high school. What was high school like for you?
School was a little confusing. I don't think I was invited to parties as much as, other students because, I had a language barrier and I had a social barrier. However, that I had a few friends that I still keep in touch with and the classes were great. And my favorite class was actually Latin.
Really? So you mentioned that it took you 3 months to learn English. And I find that pretty intriguing because I took Spanish for like 2 years and I still don't know it, but I passed. And so what was that like? What did you do to help you quickly learn the English language?
Well, it was easy because my stepfather was Canadian. So our spoken language at home was English.
Okay.
So that, really helped a lot.
Okay. And so now talk to me about graduating from high school, transitioning to college. What was that like for you?
Well, since I didn't really have that big of a social life still, and I didn't go to as many parties as my peers, I was able to graduate as a junior and skip my senior year. And then I went to college. And that was pretty much it. And then it took me 7 years to finish college because I was never alone before, and nobody told me to go to school, so I never did. And I really kind of, messed up. And then I straightened out myself when I had to pay for my own tuition.
Right. And so then you transitioned from college to graduate studies, and you said that that's kind of where things started to really click for you. So talk to me about where you went to graduate school, what did you study, and what that experience was like.
Yeah, during college, actually, let me go back just for a few seconds. I had my first child during my college years, and actually, that's what, now that I think about it, pushed me into maturity. That kind of forced me to mature because I needed to make money for the kid, and I needed the medical insurance, which is extremely important. So I finally finished college, and then I was working full time. I was working 70 hours a week. At the same time, I was getting my MBA, and I got my MBA from Walden University online because I didn't really have the time to sit in class. And I also learned better on my own. I'm more of a self-learner. I'm very fast-paced, and I tend to get bored in classrooms. So that's how I got my MBA. And I also got my doctorate ABD at the same, online university. My dream was just to, be an adjunct professor in colleges so that I can give back to the community.
Right. And so who were some of the people that were influential in your life in your early years?
I think my stepfather was a great influence. He was an MIT PhD grad. He taught me how to work on the cars, change spark plugs, change oils. And I think my technical side came from him, as I was made to do all these things that traditionally at that time, only boys did. And I was the only child, for both my biological parents and my stepfather. So there was a lot of attention on me. One of the reasons is I went to college earlier so that I could be even more free. So that's why I became, more technical. I went into engineering, systems admin and IT and so forth.
So talk to me about your professional journey after college. Obviously I understand that you are now, a business owner, but talk to me about graduating from college, working on your graduate degree, and what your professional journey was like.
Sure. I started my first real job. I did a lot of different jobs like web development and IT support and things like that. I taught myself. When I was in college, I was a lab technician. I didn't know the difference between a monitor and one of those towers, CPUs. But the manager was nice enough to teach me. And from there on, I realized, I really had the technical aptitude to advance very quickly. So my first job was with Cavalier Telephone, where the CEO was Brad Evans. I remember him. He was one of the very influential person in my life. I looked up to him. I was the 7th employee. The other 5 were owners. And I was the IT technician that was responsible for internal IT. And a month later, he said, Elizabeth, I would like to be an ISP, Internet Service Provider. I was like, oh, what's that? And then I started reading all these for dummy books, and he bought these equipments for wide area network where I can advertise BGP, telecom equipment. Back then, we had dial-up, DSL. I'm giving away my age, I know, and all kinds of things. So me and another engineer, we were able to figure it out by just doing it. And I was so happy whenever, we could ping something using our equipment. That was the beginning of my career. I stayed there for 7.5 years. I did everything everybody asked me to. I never saw it as, that's not my job. I always saw everything as a learning opportunity. So I absorbed everything, did everything I could. Sometimes I worked 100 hours. Sometimes I worked 3 days straight when we had problems, didn't sleep, and I was like a zombie, but I really enjoyed it. I had a great time.
So what was your motivation to venture out and start your own business?
Well, I was a hired gun for a very long time to a COO and CEO at my last full-time job. However, my last company got purchased, and I had an LLC, and I started to do work on my own as a consultant. And then, when we get into some turmoils in the country where I can't really disclose what they are, people will ask me, from the government, hey, can you do this for us? We really need you. This is a humanitarian effort. This is a rescue effort. Please, help us with that. Even though I come from IT, I'm very versatile. So at this point, and I would say, I'm probably not the most cutting edge IT person, but I'm very good at logistics and just getting anything done, doing whatever it takes. So I did a lot of that, as a contractor to help the government when they called on me. And I also consult for some businesses. So at one point, last year I had about 200 people that I was working with in my company to try to do some good, for the world.
So what was your biggest challenge transitioning from corporate America to being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think you have to do a lot better accounting, that's for sure. And nobody, I used to be driven a little bit by guilt. A lot of people can guilt me into doing things like working 100 hours straight, nonstop, because I have a deadline. I don't want to disappoint people. Now it's just me, right? So I had to, improve my discipline to say, I have to force myself to do all these things. It's not a 40-hour work week still because I'm on this mission. I still have to work 100 hours. I got to work 48 hours straight without sleep. And nobody's telling me what to do. I don't feel guilty. However, I became more mission focused, getting the job done rather than, this is my job and I take pride in my job. I still take great pride in my job, but at the same time, I really have to be self-managing and be very motivated. My thing is, I'm not very greedy. I'm not materialistic. So a lot of folks, in the business world are driven by greed, and it's not a bad thing, and ambition. And I don't have either one of those. However, I do have the heart to do good and do what is right, and then that's what's been driving me.
So tell us a little bit about Harmonic Solutions. Like what do you do exactly, and who are some of your clients?
I typically sub to prime contractors just because I'm a one-person show. Mm-hmm. I do consulting for some well-known government contractors, and then I also support the government through subcontracting work. Sometimes the government will come to me directly, say, "Okay, you do this." Then I'll try to, work with the partners I have that are prime contractors for urgent and compelling matters. And then I would basically, be responsible for the mission and deliver the solution and the mission for the government.
Are there any particular projects that have been extremely challenging or memorable to you?
Yes, I did a humanitarian mission starting 2021. I can't really mention, what they are, but there were a lot of, people coming from overseas, in terrible shape. And we tried our best to take care of them as, they took care of us as our allies. That was very challenging because, at one point I was awake for 3 nights. The first 2 weeks I was on a mission remotely at a different state, because that's where we received them. I didn't even have a hotel room. And people asked me, "What's wrong with you, Elizabeth?" So, well, I didn't see the point of wasting government money for a room that I was never going to use. So the only time I slept was when my driver drove me from that state to my home so I could take a shower, change my clothes, and then go back. So I slept about 4-5 hours the most, every 2-3 days. And I saw that our military colleagues, actually falling asleep on their desks when processing somebody, So it was a hard time for everybody, not just me. Everybody worked very hard. I was just a part of the team that delivered.
So talk to me a little bit about your family and what role family plays in your motivation and inspiration to do the work that you do.
First of all, my first child, Lily, I had her when I was 23. She was a true inspiration. She forced me to have discipline and stop job hopping because I needed that medical insurance. Remember I told you about that? That was really, really important. That's how it started. And then, I had a second child, Sophia, Annabelle, and, they both motivated me a lot as a young mother because, to be honest, in my early 20s or even mid 20s, I was not as responsible as I am today. I have been maturing throughout the years and decades. So having, the responsibility of other human beings that are helpless really helped me, get with the program and get on with life. I always had my parents, my stepfather was always very encouraging. Even when I had my first two kids, my parents weren't really happy that I was a young mother, my biological parents. My stepfather always said, hey, you do what you like. The sky is the limit. If you don't reach for the sky, how do you know what your limit is?
Right, right. So, I think kids, for a lot of people, create that motivation to, get serious about life. For myself, I think that was a pivotal point in my life. I've seen it with my brother and other people as well. So how important of a role are your kids in terms of your inspiration?
Extremely important. They're the most important because without them, I might not have finished college because I had my first child before I finished my college studies. As I told you, I was the only child, so there was a lot of attention. I have many helicopter parents, probably 4 of them, and not counting, a few others that also helped me along the way. So, I didn't really have the discipline in college because I was told what to do all my life. To actually go to class and do what I was supposed to do. Not until, I had my kids. And then I actually had to pay for my own college because my parents cut me off. They said, you do so poorly, you should come home. I want to go home and be managed again. So I stayed, remote, at least 2 hours away from my parents so they couldn't reach me right away. And I just worked for the kids. And because of the kids, I finished college. I kept working very, very hard. I didn't job hop anymore. And then, I decided perhaps, I went from engineering to manager, and to become an executive, I realized I needed an advanced degree. So I went and got my MBA while I was in school, and I still had 2 kids. And I have to say, my ex-mother and father-in-law played a great role in, what I became, because they really took care of the kids for me when I needed to go to school, when I had to work. Somebody had to take the children. We weren't allowed to take the children to work. So I'm very thankful to them.
So what role does community service and giving back to your community, what role does that play in your corporate and personal life? What are some of the things you're involved with?
I think that, they made me who I am today, which I'm pretty happy with. I embrace continuous improvement. I will get better tomorrow than today. When you see me tomorrow, I'm going to be a better person, Currently, I serve as the vice chair for the Howard University Executive Education Advisory Board of Advisors. And I also serve as one of the trustees for CODA Support Organization, where our success is defined by the success of the veterans and their families we serve. I'm also the acting executive director for them currently, because we lost our most recent leader. And I also foster kittens. I always like kittens, and I foster kittens for fancy cats. So I do a lot of different things. And my kids sometimes hear me, work and talk on Zoom, and they ask me, what is your job? It's very confusing. You're doing so many very different things that are not related. And I tell them it's all related. It's all service to the community. We got to be selfless. When I was younger, I focused a lot on work and career, and ultimately, I made decent money to support my family, and perhaps more than I needed. And therefore, I see, that right now, at the latter part of my career, or my life, actually, I can give back to the community. I can help the veterans. I can help with, education and providing, helping improve access to higher education at Howard University by working with my partners. And that's actually when I met the amazing Omarosa, and also, helping kittens. Because you can't just let them get euthanized in shelters. So, we got to help them all.
So typically on on your professional journey, there is either individuals or an individual who has inspired you, motivated you, mentored you, etc. Are there any individuals or an individual that has played that role in your personal life and professional life?
Absolutely. In the most recent 5 years, Omarosa has been a real inspiration to me. I call her my sister. We kind of look alike, right?
Yeah, like twins.
And she's a true inspiration to me because she's beautiful outside and outside and inside. She's just an amazing person. Before that, as I was saying, the owner of Cavalier Telephone that I worked for 7 or 8 years, Brad Evans, he really pushed me into becoming that great engineer that I became ultimately. And he taught me that if I tried hard enough, I can do anything, reasonably speaking.
Yeah, yeah. So what accomplishment or achievement are you most proud of?
I think I am most proud of the mission that I completed for the government as a subcontractor between 2021 and 2022, because that was very difficult. And the fact that, not everybody hears about it all the time and have all kinds of problems, I think I played a part in it. And, it was a very, very difficult thing to do. And it was the hardest I've ever had to work. I never thought after, I left, I left my full-time job that I would have to do something like that. And I wasn't really prepared at first I was semi-retired and then I jumped fully in, with both my feet into something, very, very challenging like that. I was notified the day before, and within, 4 hours, I had to mobilize and do everything that was necessary to get the job done. And it was supposed to last a month, and it lasted for, over a year. And I continued with it, I stuck with it, and I was able to help a lot of people along the way, both, our guests that we welcomed, as well as, people that needed jobs in this country along the East Coast that wouldn't have otherwise gotten the job. And given that I'm a small business, I was able to really take care of them financially because I wasn't looking to make any money myself. So I was able to spread that and allow a lot of people to change their lives.
That's great work that you're doing. I want to understand, as an entrepreneur, what's on the horizon? What's your goal and aspirations for your business?
I actually would like to focus on helping others. I'm not really focused on making money myself. I always tell people, you do the right things and do them right and be there for everybody and everything and that you can and do your best. The money comes, my goal is to, continue to support the Howard University Executive Education Program and do my best because higher education changes lives. And that's what, lift people from poverty and improves the happiness, health of all Americans and also promotes economic growth. I would like to, continue my work with Code of Support, the Veterans and Military Organization, because I believe that we need to take care of the folks that served and made the sacrifice for our country so that we can be free. And some of them make the ultimate sacrifice, but they leave families and children behind. It's our job to take care of them. Along the way, whatever, the government wants me to do to support them, I'm here to support them.
So a lot of what you talk about is similar to the way I run my operation. I call it purpose over profits. We try to do work that we feel is meaningful, serves a purpose greater than ourselves. And I hear you talk a lot about that in the way that you run your business. Ultimately, what do you want your legacy to be as an entrepreneur, business person, and mother?
Whatever I do, whatever I start, I would like it to last longer than my lifetime so that people can continue to serve this beautiful nation, whatever it may be, because I do so many things,
Yeah, yeah. And so, obviously the name of this show is Self-Made. And when I listen to you tell your story, the transition from China to the United States, some of the challenges you had in terms of relationships and adapting to the educational system here in the United States, and then going to college, having a child at an early age and being able to bounce back from all of those obstacles to go on and become a successful businesswoman. In your own words, what would you describe as being self-made?
It doesn't matter how you were born. what you were given when you were born. What matters is what you do with your life, and how many people you can help, and how much improvement you can make, for your community.
Yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. And you talked about your father, your stepfather. Can you briefly touch on your mother and the role that she's played in your life?
Sure. My mother was very good academically. She is a very successful person. She retired as an information officer from the World Bank. She was the daughter of, somebody who was extremely capitalist, that was thrown in jail during the Communist Revolution. And she came here. She left me actually in China and came to the United States to pursue her college degree, because the communist government did not allow her to pursue a college degree, even though she was number one in school, because she was capitalist, and both my grandpas are on Chinese Wiki from what I heard. So she worked very hard. I didn't see her for 7-8 years. A lot of people say that, I don't have a lot of feminine traits, probably because, I didn't have that mother's touch. However, she always took care of me. She worked very hard for me, and she was always there for me. She was the least of the helicopter parents, I would say. So she helped me with my independence, and she's always there. She's wonderful. She loves my children, and, she's just a wonderful mother.
Well, Elizabeth, I want to thank you so much for being on this episode of Self-Made. I'm your host, Dee Brown Ceo. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. And remember, without you, there's no me.